Hello and welcome to another Watercolor Wednesday. Today we will be painting a still life. We're going to do a watercolor apple from an actual apple model. So grab an apple and your paints and we can get started. For this painting you are going to need paints in red, yellow, green, and purple, a small round watercolor brush, some watercolor paper, and of course an apple so that you can use as reference. If you don't have any apples, you could always get a picture off the internet as well. So to begin, I am going to take a look at my apple and choose which side I want to use as the model. And I've decided that I'm going to kind of have this upright look, but it's going to be looking into the top of the apple. So I've grabbed a screenshot here so you have a little bit of what I'm going off of. And I begin by sketching the apple, and I'm just doing so freehand. If you need, you can trace, or whatever works best for you is fine. I didn't provide a traceable outline for this video just because it will depend on your apple, what it looks like. And once you've finished tracing the apple, don't forget your stem or any other little imperfections on it. Once you finish tracing the apple, you can begin grabbing your paints. Variation in the color, and there's definitely red, but there's a lot of the yellow, kind of a beigey, greeny yellow. And I'm going to start by putting some undertones. So the colors that are kind of brightest on here are the red. So I'm going to start by kind of swatching that out and getting it in the areas where it is on the apple. I'll go back over this later and with a process called glazing to actually bring up the color and make it a little more uniform so it doesn't look splotchy. Now you'll notice I'm also mixing colors here because as you look at your apple or at my apple on the screen, there's never really two places where the colors are the exact same. So the red, just the true red, is used in one area, and then you mix it with a little bit of yellow to get an orangier color, use that next, and then you keep kind of mixing and matching and playing with the colors so you get that natural looking variation. And you'll see I'll pull in different amounts just based on the darkness or the lightness of the areas on the apple model. Now as I'm doing this first layer, I'm intentionally leaving sections of the apple white, and those are the sections that are actually lighter overall on the apple. And that's so that as I build the layers, I'm building them with different values of lightness and darkness from the very beginning, and it'll make it easier to keep that value change as we paint up the layers on the apple. One of the things I noticed and found kind of interesting as I was doing this apple piece is as you look at the individual colors across the apple, they're not all very pretty. There's a lot of these like kind of gross browns and greens that are just really not my color preference, and they really don't look nice on their own, but then when you look at the apple as a whole, it's so pleasing to the eye. It's really interesting. At this point, I had a lot of drying on the first layers, and so I started to fill in some of the whites and blend in some of the edges to give the actual uniform shape, round shape of the apple. And both of these actions helped to blend it in a little bit and start to bring in the uniformity of the apple. As I'm laying this next layer, I go around the apple in a way that helps make it look like a sphere rather than a flat circle on a piece of paper. And so to do that, as I'm coming down with my brush to make a vertical stripe up and down the apple, I'm curving it ever so slightly. And same when I come up from the bottom, I'm curving it And this makes it look like the way you would draw maybe like a beach ball, the stripes down the side of it and they arc out. It's the same idea, and that's what gives this apple more of a sphere-like definition, even though it's very clearly painted on flat paper. And what gives us a 3D look on a 2D surface is the depth, right? It's our perception. So when you draw things the way you see them, and instead of the way your brain sees them, it gives the object more of a realistic look. So if you see something and it's like, oh, that's an apple, it's round, and you draw a circle, the way your brain thinks it sees it, it ends up looking really wonky and unrealistic. But if you take the time to like go around and draw the wavy line and the variegated colors and the different things that actually make this apple super unique and not perfect, quote unquote, that's when your item looks like it's really coming off the page because it's so much more believably real. I began adding some little freckles because that's an attribute that my apple has, and it's something that as I continue, they'll not be quite so obvious that I've just, polka dotted the whole side of the apple, and it just kind of gives the same texture as the real one. First chose my apple and I was putting the colors on my palette, I really didn't know if I would use this purple because it felt too far off from what the apple looked like in front of me. The more I painted and the more layers I added, I realized that purple was exactly the right pop of color I needed in order to really get the darkness on the side of the apple. So it's interesting, if I had had a blue or something, I probably would have used it too, even though looking at the apple you wouldn't innately think, oh, there's blue in there. Really wanted to blend out any hard lines that I was seeing, especially since the side of the apple still had kind of a wobbly edge to it. I hadn't really gone through and smoothed anything yet, so I went through and smoothed it and kind of almost smudged it a little bit, which also gives the look that it had been turned away from you. After letting the whole thing dry for probably 15 minutes, I then go over the entire thing with just this bright red, which is what's going to really bring all the colors together and make it look like one shiny, smooth skin of a solid apple. I'm going over the apple with the red, even though I'm putting a lot of water and doing it as translucently as possible, it still really covers a lot of what I've laid down underneath it. So what I'm gonna do is, while it's still wet, take just some water on my brush and lift as much of that color out of there as possible. And these swoops and just like kind of removing that top layer, it gets rid of a lot of the pigment while keeping, like I said, the ability to tie it all in and make it all look cohesive. Once I get all my colors in, I'm going to let my painting dry until it is absolutely dry to the touch. And I'm going to go in with just some of the colors on my palette to make a bit of a brown so I can finally paint my stem. And the reason I've waited to do it to the very end is so that as we were doing all the blending and glazing, I didn't accidentally grab some of that brown to just give a little more of a glossy look. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your support. If you subscribe, you'll never miss one of my Watercolor Wednesday videos or any future videos. I'm working on some time lapses and some other fun stuff. So if you want to see last week's video, make sure you click the box in the video image above, and you can catch up if you missed last week's. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.